What's going on, guys? I'm about 3/4 of the way through the rewire on the IS300 as I'm relocating the ECU and extending the wire harness so that all of that is in the interior, vice the engine bay because it's in the way of things. But I have the intake manifold, upper intake manifold, and the throttle body off because I'm doing the rewire and working on wires. There's a lot of wires that go under that. And I saw on Craigslist 2 or 3 days ago, or maybe Facebook Marketplace, someone was selling Aristo valve covers for the Aristo. If you don't know, the engine that's in that is the 2JZ GTE twin turbo with VVTi. And this is the non-turbo, very much a non-turbo engine, also with VVTi. These are the only two 2JZ engines that have VVTi. So the guy that was in the post, he pretty much said, if you're running a front-facing manifold on this engine, it's a necessity to run the valve covers from the Aristo. It's a little frustrating because I feel like he's trying to screw someone over and get money back for parts that he bought that he was thinking would fit his IS300 or GS300, and now he's trying to sell them because he realized that they didn't fit. So he's just passing his problems off to someone else and not mentioning specifics in the post. And that's what I'm going to show today. I'm actually going to bolt on my Aristo valve covers to see how well they don't fit and try to figure out if there is a way to make it where they do fit just by using basic hardware. Because from what I understand, not all of the bolts match up around the head whenever you put the Aristo valve covers on the IS300 or GS300 engine. Since not all of the bolt holes line up, that means you will have uneven pressure on the valve cover and oil leaks in the future. So I'm going to grab those valve covers and I'm going to put them on here. It's probably going to take me another 15 minutes since I already have the upper intake manifold removed. Now, a good note is you cannot put the upper intake manifold back if you put the Aristo valve covers on because they're taller. These valve covers, they're shaped this way and they have those weird dents in them so that the upper intake manifold and the throttle body can sit on top of the engine. So you can't put your other intake manifold. You would have to get a front-facing intake manifold that goes over and down and faces towards where your ECU is located, where I've kind of taken mine out because it was right here where all these wires go to, and these plugs that are here, all the wires that are going into the interior right now are draped over the side of the car. I'm going to put my camera on the tripod and just really record me pulling this off and putting on the Aristo valve covers. Obviously I can't record me taking off the upper intake manifold and the throttle body because I've already done that. It took 15 minutes. It's very easy to do. There's YouTube videos on how to take that off. So I'm not showing that, but I am going to show how to take off the valve covers and how to put on the Aristo ones that don't fit 100%. And then I'm going to show why they don't fit 100%. I really haven't seen it myself. I've just read about it. We're going to see exactly why they don't fit really well. Now this steel braided line on mine actually goes to the turbo, so I'm just going to have to work around that because I don't want to take it off. But your car is not going to have a steel braided line. So this is a coolant line that goes to the heater. So I'm going to leave this in place. I don't want to disconnect that. It looks like I could slide this out from under and it's not interfering with me accessing those two, looks like one nut on this side and then a bolt on the other side. But this, I have to take this off. This isn't even, that's not even tight. That's probably part of the reason why this thing's leaking oil. I love this little shelf here. It's very much not a shelf. I just use it as a shelf. The heater hose is in the way. All of the 10mm bolts are the same length. I'm trying to gently pry up on these valve covers because I know that they are magnesium and not aluminum. And I believe the valve covers for the Aristo are aluminum. Looks like the valve cover gasket is kind of stuck to both the valve cover and the head a little bit. See if I can get it all off. I don't want to tear it. I want to put it back because, I mean, I'm not going to be running this engine very much longer. The intake side should be easier because I don't have to work around that heater hose. I just have to work around my wires that I have all over the place. It's the same thing though. The gasket is stuck to the head and some spots and the valve cover in other spots. And just so I don't tear it, I'll run my finger along the side and release it. This engine's only going to run like this for a little bit longer before I pull it out and then do the full rebuild for all the forged internals and everything that's going to go into it, along with the Aristo head and full engine gasket set. Now let's see if the valve cover gaskets swap over at least. So this is the other intake. It looks like these all line up well. The dents around the bolt holes are in the same spot. Intake valve cover gasket. Do you fit as perfectly as in the IS300? And that lines up perfectly, perfectly, perfectly. That fits really well. I don't want to scratch the valve cover. Steel braided line. Be careful. That is a pretty perfect fit, actually. Very much. Picture perfect. Picture perfect fit. Intake valve cover. When? That definitely fits. Probably. Yep. All these bolt holes line up perfectly. Gasket fits on the intake valve cover. So that's really good. Let's try the exhaust one now. Hopefully I won't scratch that one trying to get it in. Well, so same thing, but just by looking, this is off. So this one and this one are slightly offset by what looks to be about a 1/2 inch. But everything else looks like it lines up. And it looks like the gasket will work also. I don't want to set this GTE valve cover down because this is the one that's going to be going on the engine on my Aristo head. I don't want it scratched. It looks pretty perfect as it is. Same gasket. That is perfect. So the gaskets between the GTE VVTi and the GE VVTi, perfect fit. I guess it's worth noting on this side, on the exhaust cam would be the inside of the engine over there. It's actually bunching up a little bit, but that's pretty common with old gaskets. I think it's just because the gasket is old. I don't know how old this thing is. I don't know if it's ever been changed. Okay, so what lines up and what doesn't line up? Was this, so this one here, this one does not line up. And that is fairly obvious. I think the camera picks that up really well. So this is approximately 1 inch away. All right, so this clearly does not fit. All of the bolt holes line up except for this one in the middle. So there's 2 that are in the middle on the exhaust side. This one right here doesn't line up. So if I were trying to make this valve cover fit this engine, what I would do, and it's not going to be perfect, but it will prevent you from having oil leaks because you will have an oil leak between this bolt and this bolt somewhere, probably most likely in the middle, which will drip onto your exhaust manifold. I would do one of 2 things. I would do either A, take some kind of a hooked 10mm stud, so like a 10mm stud with some kind of a hooking thing on the bottom, hook it around this little lip that's right underneath the top of the head, and then just tighten this down just a little bit, probably around the same torque specs that these are. These are probably like 50 inch-pounds or so, and that's not a lot. That's not going to damage the head, and it's not going to be enough to break off that lip. So I would either do that, or B, which would be the safer option, put a little spacer under here that's about maybe a little shorter than a 1/2 inch tall, and then have a little piece of aluminum flat bar that sits right there that pushes down on this lip so that you're adding pressure to the middle of this valve cover. Because if you run it like this, you will have oil leaks, so it does not fit. This is not a good, I would not run my engine like this with just having like one bolt that's out. I would secure this somehow. For some reason, Toyota made it where all the other casting is the same, but this one bolt hole is off. Not sure why. Maybe there was a leak that developed easier, and they just wanted to experiment with moving this over to see if if it fixed the leaking issue. I don't know. But for whatever reason, they cast this differently. So as far as running your hoses back, so on this, you'll have to get the one-way valve and the grommet that goes into here. But basically, you have to transfer this to that, which doesn't seem that difficult, really. And then on this side, this already has that. And then you'll need a little Z-shaped hose that goes between here and here, that goes between those two. Now, because I'm this far into it, I want to get the coil cover and the timing belt cover, that one piece unit, and just put it in here. Because it looks like it's going to go all the way back, and that hose shouldn't interfere with it, but I just want to verify that. I'm going to move my wires. I relocated these to where they're not going around the front by the cam gears anymore. That's what's in the way. That's a perfect fit. And the bolts that go into here and into here, they fit perfectly. So these two bolts line up on the bottom. And that's it's going to be a hex head bolt with the rounded outside and the hex on the inside. But look at that valve cover. I love this. I love the look at this. This is just a beautiful valve cover and timing cover. And you can see how much higher these valve covers are than the original valve covers. There's no way, there's absolutely no way that the factory upper intake manifold will fit here and still bolt in. It just will not work. And the throttle body, it won't sit on top of this. If you could get it to sit on top of this, you wouldn't be able to close your hood. So this is not feasible at all to run on this engine without going with a front-facing intake manifold. And if you're going with a front-facing intake manifold, you've got to get rid of the ECU, as I'm doing here, because the intake manifold that I have going in, it has Supra runners with the Greddy upper intake manifold. The front-facing part of it actually angles down a little bit here, and it has the Infinity Q45 massive throttle body. I think it's a 90mm throttle body that will be facing down here that my turbo piping will be going into. So that will be the end setup for this engine, and I'm making videos, trying to make one video a week and post those. So this is a huge project, but I love this car, and this is definitely worth it for me. But I'm going to pretty much turn off the camera and then reverse everything that I just did and put that back on. So this is almost a perfect fit, but it's not a perfect fit. So you have the one bolt on this side that goes in the valve cover that will not hold on, but the intake cam, it will. So the intake cam fully bolts on. So that's all for this video. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Check out the other videos that I have on this car already, and it's pretty much all wiring and then an introduction for the car. And then going forward, I'm going to have a lot of videos coming up on this car, trying to put out one a week. So if you want to follow the build, follow along. This is going to be a fun build, but it's also going to be very time consuming. So make sure you watch that and check that out. Thanks a lot, and God bless you guys.